I had no idea I was going to be alone greeting you today, but here I am. Well, I'm not
But you're
alone.
not alone. I'm here with you, Mommy.
Fluff, who has replaced Brett, in case you were wondering. Actually, we did some sort of little thing like they do in the movies, and all of a sudden Brett became a cat.
I'm going to do salt with you today.
Well, thank you, Fluff. What are we talking about?
We're talking about yummy mice and dumb dogs.
Oh, well, I don't know if everybody's interested in that, Fluff. Are you going to give a demonstration on how to bathe? Because you're doing a great job doing that. Do you think we should invite Daddy back?
Hey, you're not the star. I don't think she cares.
I don't know.
Fluff. She's wondering
You
what's
think you
going
can move her
on.
blanket over that way?
Oh, which way?
That way? Oh, I guess you can sit over there. There, see?
She seems to
working.
be comfortable. Oh, and there she goes.
She's going to join Aspen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep, and there she goes. Aspen is
She's on the other couch now.
more fun anyways.
Yes, well, isn't it true? Cats are always in the most inconvenient places. If you have your laptop open, they want to sleep on it. If you're working on writing in a notebook, they want to sit on it and stare at you.
Our kitties don't do that.
Fluff does. Kitty does
she
it.
does a little, yes. Mm-hmm.
So, well, there you go.
There you go. What?
That was...
Oh, that was our intro?
Welcome. Oh.
Okay.
If you sit back, Aspen's going to have to adjust the cameras.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't sit back then. Yeah, so today, of course, Brett and I taught Sabbath school today. And so for the first time, we're probably just about going to translate it straight across to salt-ish.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah. So it's about Psalms, in case you don't know what the quarterly is about. And we started with reading Psalm 40, verses 1 to 3, if you would like to read that for us.
Psalms 40, 1 through 3. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he reached down to me and heard my cry. He brought me up out of the pit of destruction, out of the mud. And he set my feet on a rock, making my footsteps firm. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and will trust in the Lord.
Mm-hmm. And you were telling us about getting your feet stuck in mud.
Yep.
Yep.
I sure did.
Sure did.
I told that story.
Sure did.
I was surprised how many people had this experience, because I didn't think it was that unique. But, when I was younger and in Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, we have a lot of places where it's muddy. And, one of those times stomping around, I remember getting stuck in some pretty thick, miry clay mud. And it was just so thick and so, I don't know, viscous, I guess is the word for it. But, when it sunk in, I couldn't pull my foot out without it, grabbing onto my shoe, and it just kept my shoe in the mud. And we had a hard time even pulling the shoes out of the mud. And maybe you have had that experience. If you're in the South, you pretty much don't grow up in the South without having that happen to you at least once. But I was telling the story in Sabbath school when one of the times when I read through Psalms. I used to read through Psalms and journal and stuff, and I remember reading that, and it just kind of immediately came to my mind. It's like, that's kind of like the time where I had both feet stuck in the mud and I couldn't get out, and I ended up in my socks, and my shoes were pretty much ruined because they were covered in mud, and it just made me think of that verse, like, wow, I can relate to that, getting out of the mud and onto more solid ground.
No, I'm just wondering, what were you doing walking in the mud anyways?
I think in that one, that was the one down in Florida, and we were working on the boardwalk. It's Kalakwa is the camp down there, and they have this boardwalk that goes through the swamp area, kind of like the Everglade area. and we were working on repairing part of it or fixing part of it, and it's in kind of a swampy area. And so while we were working on that, I remember going down into it and like, oh my gosh. And like that time, once we had pull somebody up out of it, because they weren't sinking to their death or anything, but they were stuck, so we had to pull them up, and they lost their boot. And
Yeah, no, never had that happen. But I grew up in the north and not the south.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Georgia especially has the clay mud, which is icky, and it smells too.
Oh, that doesn't sound like fun. Yeah. So if you read through the Psalms at all, a lot of them are begging for deliverance or thanking God for deliverance, and that's basically what this week's topic was about, was God's deliverance. And so we read these 3 verses here, and honestly, if you don't stop to think about it, it sounds like every other Psalms out there. So what I decided to do was give it a modern day allegory. So when I was younger, I would occasionally go out with people I knew to do some off-roading. People in their trucks and Jeeps and such, and out there driving through the mud and up mountains and down them and things like that. So, and sometimes, of course, people get stuck. And then most of the time, of course, everybody would have a tow rope of some sort, and they'd pull each other out and such. But, just imagine, if you will, that you get stuck so bad that your friends can't pull you out, your average tow truck can't pull you out. You have to get someone who's the expert at doing that. And so as you're waiting, you wait for that person to get there. They get there and they do the seemingly impossible. They pull you out, right? And now you're going to be super excited about that. You're going to be singing this person's praises to everyone right? Well, first of all the people there who saw it, and then 2, all your friends and stuff that weren't there, you're going to be telling them about them, so that now, they're going to hear the story, and they're going to go, wow, if we ever get stuck like that, we are going to call this guy, because we know that he can get us out. And it's like sin, we get stuck in that, and we really cannot get out on our own. And so when we call on God and he helps us, it's a very exciting story. And we tell other people, they hear about it, they see the change in our own lives, and they too then learn about God and start to serve him as well, which is basically what these 3 verses were talking about.
Yep.
Yes. And so, you got David, who had this experience, whether it was a physical or a spiritual experience like that, where he's mired down in the clay, and then he prays and he waits on God, and finally God comes and answers his prayer for him and gets him out of the miry clay. And the thing about David is, he's a songwriter, right? And so he no doubt writes a song about that, and people are singing it all over his country. And this is how other people then would hear about that story and know about it, and they could praise God for that as well.
Yeah, David was a lot of David's life was being pursued and chased and run, and he early on in his life he was anointed to be a king, and yet there was years and years of exile and running from Saul and hiding in caves and like I said, living in exile in a way. And a lot of the Psalms you read, my enemies are around me and they press every side, and when God will you deliver me? And so he has a lot of Psalms that are about waiting on God's deliverance, about being persecuted, about being stuck and stuff. And you get a lot of good. There's a lot of good emotional, like when you read Psalms, of being able to read what David's talking about and relating it to your own life, and like, oh yeah, I've been there, or I felt like that, or it's very relatable. A lot of the Psalms are.
Yeah, and so take for example, and Jesus, when he healed the demoniacs, and when he was leaving, they wanted to go with him, and who wouldn't, right? But Jesus said, I want you to stay here, and I want you to tell your story. And basically, they just had that one story to tell. But I'm sure, well, one, everybody who saw them knew then who they were, and they were able to tell them how Jesus had set them free from being, yes, controlled by evil spirits and such. And so many people would learn about the power of Jesus just by that one story that they each told. But I can imagine like that affected their whole life. Everything, it touched everything in their lives. It wasn't just a small thing to them. And so that's what the Psalms is about as well, telling the story of how God takes care of us and singing praises to God about that. And then we read that and we go, wow, maybe I should try that out myself.
Well, with the blind beggar too.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because the blind beggar, and he was, could see, and Jesus healed him, and, and the Pharisees, just pushed him and pressed him and interrogated and, what do you know? This Jesus, da-da-da. And all the guy could say was, look, there's one thing I know. I was blind, and now I see. He had the one story to tell, and that was his, interaction and experience with Jesus, just like the demoniacs. He had that one story.
Mm-hmm.
And, David was singing about his story, and, we all have our stories.
Right, yeah, and there's no story too small to tell about what God has done with us, done for us, because it's always something that we could not have done for ourselves. And what we didn't get to talk about in Sabbath school was your illustration of there are no small parts, only small actors.
Yeah, so one of the things we asked in Sabbath school that we got a couple of good, and I was hoping everybody would sit up, but we wouldn't have had time. But it was, tell us your story of,
it's true, yes.
Your interaction with God. Sometime where God showed up, or an experience with God, and you do when you hear other people's stories, explore other people's stories. You get a lot from, God saved me out of the gutter, and to like today, the one person was just saying when she was pregnant, and she was, some guy was painting their house, and he would sing, and he would play this radio to the Christian station, and he would check on her.
Yeah, well, see, I guess it had taken them as a couple 3 years to get pregnant, and she was pregnant with twins, and then at 20 weeks, she had to be put on bed rest. And so there she was at home, all alone during the day, and she said she would get, and this was 20-ish years ago, a little more than 20 years ago, and so she said there wasn't any just Netflix to start binge watching and such like that. And so she could only get up for 30 minutes to be able to get her shower. And outside of that, she was supposed to lie on the couch, and she could only lie on the one side. And so it was, she felt very lonely at home by herself during the day. And then the painter, who was outside painting, when he came over, he would play Christian music and listen to sermons, and he would send her a Bible verse text every day, or
Something
give her,
like that.
Yeah,
and it was not... So, there's the alcoholic that, Jesus saves from the gutter, and then there's this person we listen to, and it's just somebody was,
It was still very meaningful to her.
And all kinds of stories in between. So, like, no story is, too big or too small. I mean, they're meaningful to all of us, whether it's what you would consider, a huge story or just a little story and everything in between. And I just was telling Miranda that's how theater is, and we have a saying in theater, and I'm sure you've heard it. There are no small parts, only small actors, and that's meaning that no matter what your role is in a production, you put 100% into it. You're a part of a production. You're part of a team, of a group, and small actors would be like, well, I only have one line. I don't even have a line, or this is nothing. And you don't try because you're not the star. You don't try because you're not, a big part. And that hurts the production. That hurts everybody, because theater, movie making as well, but, theater is a group effort. It's a team effort, and you're just a piece of the whole puzzle. You're a piece of the picture. But every piece is important. And I've seen actors who got bit parts or nothing parts, seemingly nothing, and really just went full tilt with them, and they became even a huge part of the play, one of the audience's favorite pieces of the play, even though it was just a small part, they were just like, wow. I mean, it made it so much better. So there are no small, it's what you do with your story. It's what you give to your story, to the big picture, the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little like the person, if you're on a road trip, you like to find a clean bathroom. And so you got to hand it to the person who cleans those gas station bathrooms well, even though it must seem like a very small job. It is not a small thing to find a clean bathroom when you're on a road trip. It is big.
Yeah.
Yes.
It reminds me of a story I read once in a road magazine in North Carolina, way back in the day. And I've submitted these pictures. There was a statewide contest, and they were putting together a North Carolina magazine, and I submitted some of my pictures, and they picked 3 of my pictures to be in the, magazine they put in all the rest areas and everything. But one of the articles was about a janitor who, that's all he did was he did the rest areas on a piece of the highway from the, interstate, and he was just telling a story that he'd been doing it for like 25 years, something like that. And that he just took great pride in and he talked about, like wanting people to pull over and, in a North Carolina, rest area, and that they would have a good experience and it just from cleaning the bathrooms. And it was his thing, and he was very proud of it, and he was like, this is to help my state shine and look good to visitors and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Because if you knew that when you crossed the border in North Carolina and they were going to have really nice clean bathrooms, I think you'd wait. I know we would.
I do. I kind of remember back in the day, there was times where I was like, I know they're going to have nice rest areas here. Because I used to, in college and just after, I used to travel up and down the highways a lot more, and I can't remember now. It seems like it was North Carolina, but some of them, like you knew it was going to be a good rest area because you'd been there before and it had, yeah. And I wonder how much we find that in today's culture, taking that kind of pride in whatever it is you're doing.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, there were some couple other interesting stories. That one where the guy said that he and his wife were going to buy a house, and I guess it was a buyer's market, but they really wanted the house, and so they decided that they would just pay whatever the guy was asking for. Yeah. Well, just shortly before it was all supposed to be all finished, I guess the bank got a hold of him and said, sorry, you can't buy this house because this seller will not sell to you. And they couldn't figure out why. They had no idea why. They'd never met the person, didn't know who they were. And then the very next day, he got the University of Tennessee that he had been accepted into their master's degree program. And they said, well, we're sorry, but you can't be in this program after all. And they refunded him all of the money that he had already put into that. And so, they couldn't figure out what on earth is going on. And so he said they waited a while, and I was thinking to myself, months, but then he said 10 days. I was like, oh, that wasn't the worst wait. But it's still frustrating when you've had something like that happen. And I'm sure 10 days felt like a long time. Yeah. And then he got a call from someone who worked in the conference at the New York conference. And they said, well, we're part of this committee and we got your resume here and, kind of interested in offering you a job here in the New York conference as a pastor. And he's like, but I never sent you my resume. And the guy's like, well, you know what? When I came into the office this morning, there it was lying on my desk. And they never could figure out how his resume got there.
Yeah. I didn't know. He thought it had his life all planned out and everything looked like it was working out, and then it all went to nothing in a day, and then 10 days later, miraculous other things opens up. And I was going to tell, at Sabbath school, but we were running out of time. I was going to tell how I got my first academy job. not quite as dramatic because my life wasn't going anywhere. I was waiting tables at Bennigan's, but I couldn't get a job in academy. And then out of nowhere, Madison Academy principal called me and asked, is this Brett Hadley? Yeah, and I was like, well, you have a really good friend because we want to interview for the chaplain position here at the academy. And I hadn't applied. One of my friends had, and they were actually hiring him. And in the, at the end there where they were like, well, you're hired, he told them, he said, look, you really don't want me. You want this guy, a friend of mine who would be great for this, and told him to call me. So the principal was like, you got a really good friend because he just turned this job over to you. But that was something I had no idea I hadn't applied. I didn't have anything, and I was doing nursing school. I was heading a whole other direction. And then, it was just time. But mine was very much, I was really depressed because I had gone to college. I had gotten my secondary degree, my degree in religion, secondary education, and I could not get a job teaching. And it was very depressing. And I waited a year and a half. And then, boom.
Yeah. Yeah, was there any other stories? Should we tell more stories?
It's our time.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Oh, what time is it, Aspen? How long have we been?
22 minutes.
22 minutes. Wow, short today.
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah. You got time.
Well, you can tell. Did you ever tell the story about how you got your other job in Florida?
Which one?
The one where you were on the birding trip and you saw the school. I don't know if you've ever told that, but that was a really good story too. Because God has such a sense of humor.
Yeah.
He really does.
That was my actual very first teaching job.
Yeah, he's got a chuckle on occasion.
It's all right. Well, it's kind of involved, so see if you can follow along. When I was at Southern, when I was a student, I was not a great student. And one of the things you have to take is science. You have to take so many hours of a science class. And I'd already gotten the basic, bonehead chemistry class, and I needed 3 more hours. And I was like, I'll never pass biology. I'll never pass physiology. I mean, what can I take that would be not too hard? Well, it turned out ornithology was, another choice of those who didn't feel scientifically inclined. You could get your hours taking ornithology, bird watching. And so I remember me and my roommate signed up for that. And what was happening is on the spring break, ornithology went on a trip to Florida. And I had actually gotten out of the trip because me and my buddies were going to Colorado to go snow skiing. And we had this trip planned, and I told my teacher, I'm sorry, I can't go, and it was all actually already worked out. And then the Colorado trip fell through. And so I went back to my teacher, and I was like, well, it turns out I am free. And he was like, oh, great, because we need 1 more car. We're short, we need 3 more seats for people to ride. And I'm like, well, and he knew I had a car. It's like, all right. So I went on this field trip, and it was fun, and I could tell you stories of all the stuff that happened on that. But we ended up in South Florida, and one of the places we stayed was at the little school there in South Florida, Plantation, and Fort Lauderdale Plantation, basically. And it was this really cracker box gymnasium, little rinky-dink, nothing school. And my friends were all like, this is funny. You could end up teaching a place like this, And I was like, no, guys, I will never teach in a place like this. Because, it was really bad. And so anyway, we went back up, and years later, because this was like probably 3 years later, when I got out of college, I did go down to Florida Conference, interviewed me, and they were interviewing me for chaplain job at Greater Miami Academy in Miami at GMA. And they told me I was done. I was hired. And it's like, you're it. We love you. You're gonna, you're young. That's what we need. We want to. And so when I went into the interview, the Florida Department of Education superintendent said, look, just answer the question, smile and nod. This is a done deal. I'm like, yay. So I got in there, and really right off, something was wrong because I could tell right away no one was excited to see me. And the questions were slow in coming, and people just and and I was like, something not right here. And so kind of got into it. Was a short interview too. Kind of got into the end, and so they asked me to step out so they could talk, and I stepped out, and then it was probably 10 minutes, and the educational suit came out and said, "Look, this is going south," and I had no idea. This is crazy. Just go to the hotel and I'll talk to you later, but this is not going the way we thought it was going to go. And so sure enough, they didn't. I was too white and spoke Southern, and they had, and I mean rightfully so, they had a very high Hispanic population, and they really wanted a Hispanic youth pastor to relate to the kids, to their population, which totally makes sense, I don't know how the conference missed that, but the next morning, the guy said, "Look, just go up to this other little school. We didn't think you'd ever you were gonna get hired here. We didn't even think you were, but they did say they were looking for somebody." And so he gave me directions to this place, and I'm driving around trying to find it. And just as I got probably a few minutes out, and stuff started looking familiar. I was like, "Man, I swear I've seen that gas station before." And I was like, "Man, I've been down this road before. When have I ever?" And then I turned the corner, and there was that little Cracker Box gymnasium and that little dirty little school in the middle of a dirt. It was. It was. And I just parked the car and sat there and like, God, this is not funny. And I keep telling people I must have seemed like the cockiest interview because I knew I was hired. I knew God was doing this to me, and I knew that was going to be my job. And it turned out great because it was a little dirty little school that they were trying to resurrect, and I was only there for a year. But in that year, and then the years following, people got behind it. They did this huge clean out. They repainted, they redid kind of stuff. And this school resurrected. And I haven't checked on them in a long time. But it became this great school. Like they outlasted all the other little smaller Adventist schools. And they became the school for Fort Lauderdale.
Wow.
Which was really just kind of amazing, But again, it was that I'll never teach them. And boom, and there I was. And for 1 year. And that 1 year led to other things. But yeah, it was out of nowhere. I'll never do that. And there I was. Said I'd never go back to Highland View Academy. And yet we did.
There we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because, when we went to Vegas, who thinks you're ever going to move to Las Vegas?
Yeah.
I never did.
No.
It wasn't even on the list of places that I would never want to live because it wouldn't even have to make that list. It was just so...
It was on mine.
Oh.
Well, I went through Vegas once on my way to... Where was I going? I was going to Southern Cal for, I think, a youth-to-youth conference or something. And it took me right through Vegas. And I thought, well, I got to stop in Vegas. And I stopped in Vegas. I was only there for one night, and I stayed at the Motel 6 just off the strip. And that was a mistake. And that was like, my word, I could never live here. It was just so bad. And then, years later.
I drove out to California and drove back. Both times I stayed in the hotel right there in Las Vegas.
You did?
Yeah. It was when I took Randy out to California from Colorado.
Oh.
Yeah. But I did not stay in the Motel 6. I stayed in something nicer right next to the freeway.
Where'd you stay?
Oh, a chain of some sort.
Oh, it wasn't the casino hotels, though.
Oh, no. It was meant for people traveling through.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't stay. I expected they were going to be really expensive, and I didn't even try. But in the end, those 4 little ones around the strip, the New York, and the Egyptian one, and the others are really not, they're not any more than the Motel 6 because they want you to stay there.
Yeah. Yeah, nope, didn't.
We lived there, and we just hardly ever went to the Strip.
Yeah, you just don't go to the Strip unless you get company, and then
Yeah, people come in like, go to the Strip. Okay.
yeah, and then we go down there. We're
There's
down
the
with it.
Strip. Yeah, ooh, ah,
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think we
We
ever went.
didn't go down there.
down
No,
there.
I think we went once.
Yeah, we did go to the
Because-
Venetian.
Well, yeah, it was fun for Aspen because the MGM had the lions,
Yeah.
and so we went to see that, and just a couple things like that. But no, outside of that one trip, we never went down there.
We did get some good pictures, though, of Aspen at the Venetian.
Yeah.
That was fun. Mm-hmm. And then we went down with my dad. He wanted to see it. And, well, he had been there when I was a child. Not with me. I didn't go. But he had been there back in Vegas was the heyday. And he used to go with his buddies. And they were, I guess, big gamblers and stuff. But it was interesting to hear him talk about, and this used to be this way, and this used to be this way, and Caesar's Palace and all that, because he saw it back in, the Frank Sinatra days, and yet when we went, when I was there with him, that was really kind of a special thing, because as a kid, I remember him going, but I never, we obviously never went, and now here I was in Vegas with Dad, and he was able to tell me the, different stuff. Mm-hmm. That was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Why are we talking about? Here we are. Thanks for coming, Salt. We're just telling stories.
Oh yeah. Well, I could just rap like we did at Sabbath school.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There was a guy told a story. Let me see. His son, who's in his early 20s now, I guess had gone off-roading in the desert with his grandmother and someone else.
Yeah, somebody else. And
Yeah,
they
and
were
probably
out
a
there.
cousin or something, and
Yeah.
and they got stuck
Stuck.
in the sand and couldn't get out. And so, I guess honestly, like there was only a specialist tow truck could get them out, and so they had to wait over 4 hours for this person to get there, and they didn't have anything, I don't think, except a case of water, which apparently they found quite useful there in the desert. But when he took a trip, did him and his son go off-roading? Was that the
I don't know if they
idea?
were going off-roading, but they were going on a trip.
Yeah, they were going on a trip, and I guess they left early in the morning, and so his son was still half asleep basically, and he crawls in the back, and just half asleep, but he tosses in this case of water, and the dad's like, "What is that?" And he's like, "Well, I learned that when you go on a trip, you always need to take water with you." And he was thrilled that his son had learned something like that lesson has stuck with him. But
because the whole thing happened when he was a kid. So when
Yeah.
the son was young and they had this experience, they got stuck in the desert. I didn't think they had a case of water. I thought they were short water. And the tow
maybe.
truck guy had a case
oh,
of water.
maybe that's what it was. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the tow truck guy had a case of water. And
Oh, okay.
the whole water, And then it was years later,
Yeah.
he and his dad were going on this
Yeah.
thing. And it was like, and he remembered from being a
Yes.
kid
that you take water with you
yeah.
on a trip.
that story stuck with him.
Yes, and he said he found it interesting how, years later that experience was still with him and it
Melded
was
in.
changing
Yeah.
his life, and it reminded me of this last week. Aspen had to write something for one of her classes, and I think that day in school, the next day she said something to me. She's like, "Oh, well, have you ever written a spiritual analogy at 7:45 in the morning?" And
No. Miranda does hers at 5 in the morning.
Yeah. I said, "Well, I generally have mine written before then."
So I came up with this great thing about Play-Doh, and I gave it to Aspen, and
no.
she...
So anyway,
Aspen's over there. No.
Aspen had I'm shortening it, but Aspen had written the spiritual analogy about Play-Doh. Like, she's sitting in Sabbath school when she's a little kid, and they're playing with Play-Doh, and as little kids do, they mix the colors and then put it back into the container. Might be a bright pink container, but that is not bright pink Play-Doh that's in there anymore.
Were you thinking of a specific memory? I mean,
Yeah.
or were you just making a thing?
Yeah.
Oh, did you
No.
remember actually
Yeah. Yeah.
really
they-
from like the Cradle Roll or the Sabbath schools
Yeah.
or something?
Yeah,
Wow.
That was kindergarten Sabbath school in Vegas that did that.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
specific.
You had that
I
memory.
remember.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So anyways, she made the analogy that once that Play-Doh, all those colors are mushed together, there's no separating those colors, right? And so she said, basically, this is like when we have our experiences with God and he does things for us, like you're just talking about and these other people were talking about, that we don't forget that. That becomes a part of who we are. And that's how I wrapped it up after that man told his story about his son, with always remembering later to take a case of water with him, because when you go on a trip, you need water. And so that once we do, when God does things for us, he picks our feet up out of the miry clay and such, we remember that. It becomes a part of our life, and we can't take that out.
Yep. See, I thought you were thinking when we lived in Lincoln and I was cleaning up stuff and I'd like, and the Play-Doh, because we have Play-Doh, and it'd be all meshed together, and I'm like, well, this is ruined now, and then that's like, but isn't it like God works in your life? And then I'm like,
no, it was in Vegas.
Yeah, it was in Vegas.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. That's fun that you remembered that.
Yeah, I also remember the Sabbath school teacher, because I showed it to her because I was very proud of it.
Yeah.
Because it was very pretty.
Very pretty.
Yeah. And she was like, oh,
Look,
that's so pretty.
look what you did.
And then she took it and she was like, yeah, trying to peel
Pull
it
it apart.
see if it would come apart. And she just gave it back to me like, that's very nice.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah.
That's funny. Cool. So, yeah, anyway, that's what we did today.
That's what we did today.
Yep. And just for, FYI, our son and daughter-in-law are on their way.
Oh yes, Colby and Autumn are a few hours from here, I guess, by now. So
Yep. They're coming for a few days.
be fun to see them. And they're from Nebraska, and so since it's going to be in the 60s for the next few days, it is certainly a lot warmer than it is in Nebraska.
Yeah. It's almost a summer vacation for them compared to Nebraska right now.
And Colby was hoping for warm weather in the middle of winter, so here he is.
Yep. My mom was in Indiana, and I talked to her today and said they had like -8 there for a little bit.
Yeah, too cold. Glad we're warming back up and headed into February.
Yep. So, all right. Well, that was fun. There you go.
Yes, telling stories about God at work in our life is always a lot of fun. I love to hear other people's stories.
Oh, before we go, I wanted to make that one point. I said this in Sabbath school too, that I enjoy just hearing people's opinions and perspectives on everything. I enjoy hearing, what other people think about stuff. And there's a lot I run into that, people who are profound atheists and agnostics and stuff, and they give their defense or their reasons for their not believing in God and stuff. And I was talking about this actor Stephen Fry, who's a very intelligent guy, and he was telling the story once on a talk show about he loved the church and he loved the clothes and he loved the architecture and the music, and he was like, and he says he's like, and I'm just sure I could give amazing sermons and great sermons and stuff. And he was actually going through the whole thing in the last interview with one of the bishops before getting into seminary, and they were asked him something about his relationship with Jesus, and he said, I don't believe in God, which kind of put an end to the whole going into church work. But he talks about, and he's very intelligent, and talks about his the reasons he doesn't believe in God and this kind of thing. And there are times where you hear this and well-spoken, well-educated people, and they sound very reasonable, and it's interesting that when I want to hear those things and I follow that line of reasoning, and it always comes up to a brick wall when it comes to your reasoning, falls as soon as I get to, but I had this experience. I had this experience with God, and it's hard to describe the feeling, because I can hear the reasoning, I can hear the logic, I can hear the, and it's except, and then but this happened to me, and that is not debatable. That's not an argument. This happened to me.
Right, because what happened is always something that only God could make happen.
Right.
We can't make it happen ourselves.
Yeah. It's like, no, this was completely a divine thing. It had to be. And you can't argue that with people. I can only tell you my story. I can only tell, well, like the blind man, I can only tell you I used to be blind, now I see. I can only tell you this is what happened to me, and it was real,
Mm-hmm.
And that's why no story is too big or small.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes, just like the demoniacs who were healed.
Yeah.
That might be one story, but what a powerful story that was.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was worth, sharing.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks for joining us. And, I've said this before. We're just here every week. We do this because we like doing it. It's fun for us. We enjoy it. We hope it, gives you a little something. And we'll just, we keep going because we like doing it. And,
It's true.
we're not after internet fame or fortune.
No.
We just do this because we enjoy doing it.
Nope. Our viewers ranged anywhere from 2 to 200.
Occasionally we'll hit the 200
Yeah.
mark. Yeah. So,
Yep. But you just keep on going because we do it because we do enjoy
it's
it.
fun. It's like when I tell all my students in comm, when they, I want to be a YouTube star. I'm like, let me tell you what. Do it because you enjoy it and you get something out of it and, you love it. Don't do it because it's going to be your job or you're going to make money, because you probably won't. Do it because you love it, and then it will be this joy in your life and you'll be doing something you enjoy doing, and that will keep you going. If you're doing it because you want to be famous and rich, you will give up soon. We started this, gosh, how long ago?
I think 4 years ago, because it was April of 2020 when everything shut down for COVID. So we started doing church.
Yeah.
And so this 2024, April will be 4 years.
Wow,
4 years.
We used to do a bunch back when it was COVID and I had all the time in the world to do things because nobody was working. I remember we did Aspen's object lesson video. I used to do ASL Bible promises. We did the short where we were in the car and we drive and do little things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We used to do, we did Helping Hands, how you can make a difference still stuck in your home because of COVID and stuff. And it's just a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So cool to see Aspen back. She's like, I don't know, she was 12 and looked like she was 9 and she
14.
and looked like she was 9. Yeah.
Well, she's always been tall for her age, though.
She is, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Sorry. So anyway, thanks for joining us, and hope you had a good week and a great Sabbath.